The top of the 9 o'clock hour, we always like to check in with Professor Jeff Stein, who talks about something that happened on this day with an Iowa tie. Now, speaking of Iowa, we talked about the University of Iowa yesterday,
That's
Professor,
right.
so we need to kind of balance things out this morning.
You are exactly right. Equal time for all. So let's turn our attention to Story County and the Iowa State University football program. Now, we know about recent success, but the fact is the Cyclone program has a long history. Did you know the legendary Pop Warner was one of the early coaches? We hear about Pop Warner football leagues across the country. Well, he coached at Iowa State. And starting in 1914, the team that became known as the Cyclones played in Clyde Williams Field. Now, that was named after the man who coached the team from 1907 through 1912 and later became Iowa State's athletic director. But by the 1970s, Clyde Williams Field had frankly seen better days, and in 1973, ground was broken for a new stadium to be built on the south end of campus, really in the middle of nowhere at that time. The structure was completed in just less than 2 years, and it opened on September 20th, 1975, when Coach Earl Bruce's team defeated Air Force 17-12. That original stadium had a capacity of 42,500, but it quickly grew to 46,000 the next season when bleachers in the end zones were constructed. And, of course, it has continued to grow. The two largest crowds in stadium history actually came in successive weeks in 2015. 61,500 people for games against the University of Iowa one week and the University of Northern Iowa the next. It's the third largest stadium in the Big 12 Conference and the third newest in the Big 12. Back then, it cost $7.6 million to build. That'd be the same as $33.4 million today, not even 50 years later. Now, you'll recall that facility was originally called Cyclone Stadium, and after a while, the playing surface, the actual turf, was called Jack Trice Field in honor of the African-American player who died following injuries sustained in a game at Minnesota in 1923. But the stadium itself had carried Trice's name since 1997. And Jack Trice Stadium remains the only stadium in FBS Division I football named for an African American. And it's in Ames, Iowa. The Cyclone football team has now played in 13 postseason bowl games, but 11 of those have come since they began calling their current facility home, a facility then known as Cyclone Stadium when it opened with a win over the Air Force Academy on this date back in 1975. And I remember being a teenager going to some of the games at the new stadium, and it truly was in the middle of nowhere. And just look at how the university has grown around it toward Highway 30.
Well, that's one of those things when you're driving up to it, can you see it in the distance when you're getting to that side of town and go, there it is.
Yeah, and again, when you look at the pictures as you've shown of the early stadium,
Right.
There wasn't much to it, and now it's a full complex, and it really is, as you know, the shining star in that end of town.
Yeah. Absolutely, and continues to be updated as that one end zone was done a couple years ago, so continues to be magnificent and really highlight what that area is all about.
Yeah, it's great to see
and
the
it's
team
interesting
coming
that
along
again,
too, yeah.
The original capacity compared to the record crowds, 20,000 more people these days than back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And they're putting them in there too. They're packing them in there too.
Oh, absolutely.
That's awesome. Now, people want to go back and revisit some of the things we talked about. Cyclone fans definitely want to do that. How can they do that?
IowaAlmanac.com. Lou, it's got this story and all the ones we talk about. IowaAlmanac.com. And, of course, Twitter and Instagram, if you're so inclined, at Iowa Almanac.
Yeah, it gives you a heads up as to what we're going to be talking about that morning during the Iowa Almanac segment right here on CW Iowa Live. Well, thank you, sir. Have yourself a great one and enjoy the last warm day we're going to have for a while.
Yeah, we're dodging raindrops and flooding up here. It's a little different north of Highway 20 than what you have there, but it's going to be a steamer, so I'm staying inside.
There you go. Good idea.
Sounds good. Thank you, Professor.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you tomorrow.